Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive. Happy weekend to everyone celebrating. Hopefully, we get some spring around here before it's all over with. The Birds off to Kansas City and then off to Arizona. We're going to be doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour next Friday at Costas Inn in Dundalk, honoring the late great Costas Triantafylus. And we're also going to be doing the show at Beaumont on the 17th. We're going to be up at Cooper's North on the 23rd, and then at Coco's Pub on the 30th. All of it brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery. I have the Magic 8 Balls. Luke and I had the Magic 8 Balls out at Fadley's on Wednesday. We had a lovely, lengthy conversation with Mark Viviano about doing good deeds in baseball and life and media and all sorts of things. And we talked about the pitching, Luke. I'm just going to wind you up and let's talk about the pitching and Charlie Morton. And one day it's the bats, one day it's the pitching. Kind of reminds me of when things weren't going well middle of last year, and certainly not the start they want. But good news, Gunnar Henderson going to join him in Kansas City, right?
Yeah, no question. I mean, you'll get an early season jolt there. And look, I mean, he's your best player. And for as much as we can talk about Charlie Morton, who I think was better than he was in Toronto, where I took very little positive whatsoever from what happened in Toronto with him. When he missed bats, he struck out 10, had lots of swing and miss, but when he missed on a couple occasions, they were bad misses and it led to two-run homers. So an ERA over 9 speaks for itself through 2 starts. But I'll also point out, Nestor, they scored a total of 4 runs over the 2 losses in this series. This team is not built to win 2-1, 3-2 kind of games. And I don't think they're going to win a ton of games like that over the course of the year. Even if the pitching gets to a place where it's good enough, across the board, you'll have games like that, but you're expecting this team to score, close to 5 runs a game. I mean, that's where they were last year. I mean, it's the best offenses in baseball kind of hover around that point. At least they did last year. So, I mean, Charlie Morton, you're in a 4-1 hole. Uh, what? Not even before he even retires, gets 4 outs on the day. I mean, he finished up on a positive note, striking out the side against the middle of the Boston order. But this is just the reality of when you're talking about a 41-year-old pitcher and a 41-year-old pitcher that you're paying $15 million. You're going to be under the microscope a little bit more than a 35-year-old pitcher or a 30-year-old pitcher. I mean, it's just kind of the name of the game. We talked about this, even though he ended up having a 1,900-yard rushing season. We talked about this with Derrick Henry. But the fact that he was on the wrong side of 30, which is ancient for a running back. But certainly it didn't matter with him. I mean, he was terrific. But yeah, I mean, Charlie Morton, you have to see better. There's no question. Again, did I like what I saw from him in this start more so than the Toronto start, which, he tossed 3 scoreless innings to start his night. But if you watched it, I mean, there was just so much loud contact all over the place. This was better than that. And I'm trying to look for the positives there. And I'm not saying that he can't pitch well this year, but certainly you can't miss as badly as he missed on a couple of those. I mean, Bregman crushed that ball. I mean, a fastball right down the pike. And then the second home run he gave up, it's a 3-2 pitch. I didn't think it was a horrendous pitch, but it wasn't where it needed to be. He was looking for that to be away, and it caught way too much to the plate, the curveball, which he did have a better curveball than he had in Toronto. And that's his money pitch. That's been the money pitch over the second half of his career. So, has to be better. Not going to panic over a 3-4 start. Uh, the rotation's a question. There are a lot of ifs, maybes, and buts, other than Zach Eflin, who has given you exactly what you kind of expect, reliability from him. But the rest of the guys, they need to pick it up, and they know that. And the challenge will begin this weekend in Kansas City as they're back on the road.
Well, I mean, we talk about fixing the hitting with Gunnar Henderson. He's coming back. There's no cavalry for the pitching at this point, right? And the cavalry better be Brian Baker, better be good. The cavalry better be Yennier Cano, better be good, right? And the Morton thing, I don't. It doesn't smack of Kimbrel yet, but when it's over for all pitchers. Especially guys that throw 95 miles an hour. If you're out there throwing Charlie Huff and you're out there Wilbur Wooding it and Phil Necroing it, that's one thing. Or if you have some level of craft about you, the way some sort of Greg Maddux or Scott McGregor soft toss guys do. There's no such thing as soft toss anymore in the big leagues. We talked about, I had a long chat about Jamie Moyer, believe it or not, with Ron Cassie after you left, and trying to find that in modern baseball again. I would just say for them with Morton, I don't. You said the alarm's up after 30. I don't know where the alarm is over 40. I didn't want to believe Kimbrel was done, and you were throwing sand on him pretty early on, saying this isn't good. Yeah, and there's so many measurables in pitching now. Just
There is.
every Sig Meidel's looking at everything. Ben McDonald talks spin rate, spin rate, spin rate with Charlie Morton, but when it's 5-0, or 5-2, or whatever it was, um, that's not good enough. Spin rate's not good enough at this point. And Charlie Morton, dude, that guy's got so much experience doing this. He knows what he's done wrong. He's very emotional about it, obviously. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? You see the want in him, and we'll get to the want in Steve Bisciotti and John Harbaugh after their little powwow with Garrett Downing. But you see the want in him, and I like all of that. And I like how they're spinning it on Masson now. I know you haven't watched because you've been at the games. I've been watching the TV broadcast because that's what us non-media guys do. Um, they're calling this a veteran rotation. I
Well, it
it's
is.
veteran if it's good. If it's veteran if it's
Yeah.
good. I don't know what you call it if it's not. Over the hill if it's not, and that's not good. His ERA's 10, dude. I mean, it just is what it is, and it it I'm not envisioning that he's going to be dominant at any point. He just needs to be way better along the edges and the margins of giving up big flies, right?
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not talking about this strictly looking at the ERA and looking at the numbers because anyone can look at the numbers in the box score and say he's got a +9 ERA. I mean, that's not good enough. That's why I am trying to bring some nuance here and say I do think he had better stuff against the Red Sox. He had 16 swings and misses on 48 swings. That tells you that there's stuff that is playing, but again, when you miss, you can't miss middle fastball against Alex Bregman, who hit the ball over the old wall in left field. Something that I thought that was ironic, and I pointed this out in my 12 Orioles thoughts. Following the series loss, the Red Sox had 4 home runs to left field. 3 of those would not have cleared the old dimensions. Just
I know you're
s-
keeping the math
some
on
food
that.
for
If you're not, everybody
it's
will
not
be.
it's not even about that. It's just all the conjecture in the offseason was Ryan Mountcastle's going to love this and Jordan Westburg's going to love this and Adley Rutschman is going to love this and Gunnar Henderson hitting the other way is going to love this. And guess what? That's all true. I'm not disputing that, but there was always the other side to this, especially when you're talking about a pitching staff that you have some concerns about, you have some questions about, and that's where I'm just pointing it out. And some of it's being facetious. And look, we're talking about 3 games, right? I mean, they're 3-4. They're not 0-7. If you want to talk about a team that has problems, we can talk about the Atlanta Braves for a moment. A team that had higher expectations, in the eyes of many. But they have to pitch better. There's no question about that. If you're looking for a positive, I do think the bullpen. I think Brian Baker actually has looked good. And he's another guy. The movement on his pitches has looked better than it has in the past. I mean, he always threw hard, but he's shown some good movement. I think that there's been a lot written about the kick changeup. That you're seeing some pitchers around the league. It's a different grip. And you get a little bit different movement on it. He's thrown that. It's looked good. Now, the question for him or for anyone in the bullpen for the Orioles, consistency. All right. I mean, you got to be able to do that not just for a week, but you got to do that over many weeks. You have to do that over 6 months. So, but again with Morton, you want to give a guy the benefit of the doubt. He's 41 now, but he still pitched effectively at age 38, 39, and 40. Now he wasn't the all-star version of Charlie Morton the last couple years, but he was still good enough that he was a legitimate major league starter. So anyone can have you could take 2 starts from just about any pitcher in baseball or back-to-back starts at some point in the season and you'll get an ERA that doesn't look great. I mean, we remember how bad Corbin Burns was in August last year. So you don't want to overreact, but again, when you are talking about someone who's 41, you have questions. That's why I was at least encouraged enough that the curveball played much better against the Red Sox than it did. There wasn't much of anything I liked from what I saw with him in Toronto. I mean, he missed some bats very early, but everything they hit hard. The fact that if you're completely washed up, I don't think you can strike out 10 batters, right? I don't think you can get 16 pitches swing and miss.
Fair
Uh,
enough. I mean, that's very,
and
very
that's what
fair.
and that's what I mean by that. So now that said, the results are still like you can't give up two long balls like that. I mean, of course. And what was frustrating about it that in each case they came after a walk, right? I mean, it was a walk and then a home run right after that. So he has to be better, but at the same time, that's where you look at someone like him as opposed to say Cade Povich, who as we talked about earlier this week, I look at Cade Povich and I do see the makings of a guy that I think can figure it out and be a good major league starter. Now, what that ceiling is, I have no idea at this point in
Well,
time.
you like to call
But
him emerging, right?
yeah,
And we know Sagano, Morton, Gibson, they're not going to emerge. They're going to exist.
yeah. I mean, Sagano emerge in the sense that there's a lack of familiarity, but he's 35, right? I mean, the book is out that he's not going to overpower people. He's going to try to mix six pitches and get you out. But yeah, but that's where when you're talking about veteran pitchers, they have a track record where they've gone through laws. Go look at Charlie Morton's career. I said this to you earlier in the offseason, and we never really got into it that much, but he's had a fascinating career when you kind of look at the where he was his first few years in the majors. I mean, he was a guy who I think through his first 3 or 4 seasons had a career ERA over 5. He was trending to be an out of baseball, fairly, before the age of 30, let's say. He went to Pittsburgh. That was kind of the era of infield shifting, ground balls, two seam fastballs. I mean, the Orioles did that circa 2012, 13, 14, and that same time. Lots of teams were doing that. And then he got to Houston, and they said, "Why are you throwing your sinker so much? Why are you throwing your fastball so much? Your sinker's your worst pitch. We like your curveball. Throw your curveball more and throw a four seam fastball that will be on a higher plane that'll make your curveball even tougher to hit." And that's where he kind of had the second act where he had a couple good years in Pittsburgh and then became the guy that he became over the second half of his career, which was at his best, the guy that was an all-star caliber pitcher. So,
Guy that made himself a nice $150
right.
million more, right?
Sure. I mean, made money and survived, to your point, survived and also thrived. So on the flip side, when someone like Cade Povich struggles, he's young. He doesn't have much of a track record at all of, maybe in the minor leagues, and that's it, of leaning on some success in the past to give you confidence that you can overcome it. That's where you're hoping someone like Charlie Morton looks at these first two games and say, hey, I stunk in Toronto. The 2 home runs ruined my outing against Boston. Even if I struck out guys and missed bats and all that, I still didn't get the results. So you're hoping that he can go back to the drawing board and be a little more precise in those spots that he needs to be precise. I mean, one thing, and you know this, Nestor, having watched baseball, right? I mean, there's a difference between just looking at box scores and really watching what you see. And one thing that I've realized and become much more keenly aware as I get older, watching this and trying to do justice covering this for a living is, the margin for error between a good start and a bad start, or what you perceive to be a bad start, it's not much. In the same way that you can have a guy that gets great results, six innings, he'll scatter 10 hits and give up 2 runs, and you say, "How he pitched well." But if you actually watched it and you saw how many times the ball was squared up and how many times his defense bailed him out, you'd say, "Okay, he got good results, but I wouldn't say that he was dominant." There's a lot of nuance that goes into it that way. So, what you're hoping for, if you're the Orioles and if you're Charlie Morton, you're looking at this and saying, "Okay, it's better second start than the first, got deeper into the game, finished on a higher note, with the striking out the side in the 5th inning. He did get strikeouts. He did miss bats. His curveball was way better, and that's his best pitch. I mean, that's been his bread and butter for, like I said, from the time he got to Houston. I mean, that he became a totally different pitcher than he was earlier in his career. And you're hoping that he can continue to lean into that and be better. If not, then you got a problem because, like you said, I mean, Kyle Gibson's still at least a couple weeks away. I mean, Grayson Rodriguez is just at the point where he's throwing shorter side sessions. I mean, we know Bradish and Tyler Wells. It's like, who knows if you'll get anything from them in August and September. I mean, you can't count on that. So, this is kind of what it is right now. And even guys like Trevor Rogers and Chase McDermott are still working their way back from their springtime injuries. So, this is just kind of what it is. And you're not going to bail on it after 2 or 3 starts, especially for a guy you're giving $15 million, but you want to see progress. Like I said, if you want to say it, it was a step in the right direction. It's because the bar was as low as it could possibly be against Toronto, but he knows he needs to be better. They know he needs to be better. I mean, it's not going to cut it. You can't give up 5 runs in 5 innings and expect to win. But again, I'll also point out over the last 2 nights, and easier said than done, going up against Crochet, and on Thursday, I mean, they scored four. They managed a fourth run, but they had 3 runs through 8 innings. It's not how this team's built to win. They got to swing the bats, and that's where you hope Gunnar Henderson being back in the lineup. And it's not like they have a bunch of guys that aren't hitting. It's kind of been feast or famine, right? They put up 12 runs, 9 runs, and 8 runs in their victories, and but it's been very very scarce in their losses in terms of being able to score. So
Well,
it's
good pitching too. 4 hits off Crochet is what it is,
oh
right?
yeah, I mean Crochet was, but Toronto, the Sunday game, they had traffic all over the bases. They just didn't come through with runners in scoring position. On Thursday, they scored a couple runs early on, but I mean, it's tough when your starting pitcher gives up a pair of 2-run homers in the first 2 innings. You're in a hole. I mean, and they weren't able to climb out. So nothing to panic about. You know what? As I'm talking about this and the any angst that anyone can sense from my voice, it's not because of what I've seen this week. It's because of our priors, right? I mean, what we thought about this pitching staff all off season, the spring, the fact that Grayson Rodriguez is hurt now. It's tough, and in the meantime, they're not going to see Corbin Burns when they go to Arizona because he's scheduled to start I think Sunday in DC, ironically, but they'll get a reminder looking at next week when they're in Arizona, they'll look at the other dugout and they'll see the guy that was their ace last year, and they don't have that guy right now. I mean, Zach Eflin is dependable. Thank goodness they have him because he's been very reliable. He has their only 2 quality starts so far, but they need more, and they understand that. It's just going to be a matter of can they get that, and it's going to start with Dean Kramer on Friday night, and hopefully you get better from Sagano his second time around, which hopefully will involve staying hydrated so you're not dealing with cramping as they're playing in Kansas City, which I haven't seen the weather forecast, but I don't know. Early April in Kansas City, I'm usually not expecting it to be too warm. So, we'll see how he handles that.
Are they going to see Burns in Arizona? Yes, right?
No, no, I just made mention of it in passing, but looking at it, barring something that gets flipped around, looks like he's going to start the finale. They're actually in DC this weekend,
Oh,
and,
so
and he,
he's going to pitch it in that
he's
part.
going to pitch
Okay.
locally. Yeah, yeah. So it looks like they'll miss him. I mean, who knows? You can always get a weather thing, but it's kind of a weird situation. We didn't mention it because it wasn't that I mean, it's not consequential to the Orioles anymore, but it was funny to hear that the Diamondbacks and Lavala, their manager, kind of messed up his schedule. So Burns actually started the season technically as the fifth starter in their rotation, which I just thought was funny. And it won't matter in the big picture, but I thought that was kind of weird. But it also speaks to what kind of routine he has. I mean, he is very steadfast in how he does things, and that's why we you and I probably we kind of opined and speculated about times where they could skip other guys and move Burns up and have him pitch every 5 days. And
No way.
he's not really that guy. Like he's very routine oriented. And look, unlike so many of these other pitchers who pitched at that level for that length of time, he's been able to stay healthy. So it's tough to argue with him on that point. So, but I thought it was interesting how, yeah, they kind of messed up his schedule the last few weeks of spring training, and it kind of put him into the fifth spot in their starting rotation, which is kind of funny when you think about it. But yeah, it's not looking like, barring rain issues in DC this weekend, not looking like the Orioles will see Burns, but they'll see him in the other dugout and they'll wish he was on their side. That's for sure.
They're going to see some rain in Kansas City on Friday night too, so not going to be great weather there, at least to start the thing. Luke Jones is here. Gunnar Henderson's going to start the thing in Kansas City. Anything you want to put a bow on the hitting or on the offense, just in a general sense that the obvious is they can't be worse with Gunnar Henderson back. They need him back. I mean, there's only
Uh,
so much Mateo and Urias you can do.
yeah, and look, I mean, I thought Jackson Holliday played a solid shortstop. I remember talking to you 3, 4 weeks ago when when it was kind of trending in the direction that you knew Gunnar probably or at least possibly was going to miss the start of the season. And, I had my reservations. I thought, don't mess with the kid. Just let him focus on second base. I thought he acquitted himself well at shortstop. And I think he's doing a nice, had an opposite field hit on Thursday. I think he's done a nice job. I mean, the star of the offense so far has been Cedric Mullins. I mean, he hit leadoff for the first time since the end of 2023. On Thursday, hit a leadoff home run, had a walk, hit by pitch. I mean, I even posed the question, do you keep Mullins in the leadoff spot against right-handed pitching, at least for the time being? And you can change it whenever you want and put Gunnar in the number 3 spot. I mean, I'm just spitballing at the time, for the time being. But Mullins has swung it well. And again, you look at the averages, you look at the OPS. Just because the last 2 games against Boston didn't go so well. I mean, most of these guys are swinging the bat pretty well. So you're hoping that translates better against the Royals this time around than the last time they faced the Royals. To put it mildly. As they're going to see Lugo, they'll see Waka on Saturday. They'll see a lefty on Sunday. They will miss, they won't have to face Cole Reagan, so that's a good thing. But, they've got to.
Well, if they miss Reagans and Burns, that helps them immensely because they didn't miss Crochet and they didn't hit Crochet either.
Yeah, no question. So, look, I mean, they've got to hit the ball, and they know that. And having Gunnar Henderson back, your best player, should help a lot in that regard. He got 5 games under his belt, hit a couple home runs for Norfolk. Brandon Hyde sounded very confident and positive about how he was feeling. And, I could see a scenario where they give Gunnar maybe these first couple of weeks, give him a game or two at DH here or there or something like that. You want to be careful, make sure he's fully healthy, but they were very careful. I mean, that intercostal strain, which is, it's a rib cage muscle, basically, it's in the same family as the oblique, the dreaded oblique injury. But he had that injury, what was it, February 27th? And you never got the sense that it was like this, oh my gosh, like a really serious injury, but they wanted to be careful because, you can't baby it in the middle of the season without him missing a month. So, and you don't want to force him, you don't want to rush him back because if he has a setback, March 17th, if they had done that, then suddenly now you're talking about him missing 6 weeks. So this was, this is the way you wanted to handle it. You wanted to slow play it. And
well, it's not football, it's baseball. They know what
he
they're
misses
doing.
a week of games.
They're working hard on this.
Yeah, it's no big deal. I mean, there's nothing about it. I made the joke, not that Baltimore needs to hear any more about MVP races after Lamar and Josh Allen this past year, but go look at what Aaron Judge's numbers were the first 3 weeks of last season and go look at the season he had. So it's a reminder. I mean, 7 games is nothing in baseball. And that's why, the Orioles are 3-4. They haven't pitched particularly well, and, other than Eflin and, the bullpen's been mostly good. I can't be too concerned with the bullpen at this point. But, the rest of the rotation, got to step it up. Dean Kramer's got to be the best version of himself Friday night. They need Sagano to not cramp up and, acquit himself well in his second major league start. And then Cade Povich on Sunday. I liked some of the stuff that he showed against the Red Sox, but you have to be more efficient with your pitches. So, I'm not sitting here saying that I expect these 3 guys to go 7 and give up 2 runs. I mean, I'm not holding my breath for that, but you need better. And they know that, and that's going to be the challenge. And, Kansas City is an interesting team. I mean, after what they did, the run they made last year, and I mean, obviously you have one of the best. They have one of the best players in the game, in Bobby Witt, and you saw what their pitching did against the Orioles in the wild card series. But they're also a team that, they struggled to hit the ball last year, even making the playoffs. So you're hoping that this is a lineup that, unlike the Red Sox and even Toronto, who have names in there that you have to be weary of. I mean, we saw Alex Bregman do what he did on Thursday. But
and he's being paid handsomely to do that.
Oh, no question, no question. I mean, look, I mean, they say what you want about some of the other moves that other teams in the division made, but when you talk about the 1-2 punch of trading for Crochet and then signing Bregman, I mean, that's the best 1-2 punch as far as moves made in the division of anyone. So, my biggest takeaway is probably not even anything about the Orioles in this series. It's probably more so, the Red Sox looked the part of a team that's really closed the gap with the Orioles and with the Yankees. They were 3rd place last year, but they were 500. they look better. They certainly do. So, they're certainly, I'm not ready to say that they're the favorite in the division just yet, as some people have indicated, but they've got a nice mix of veterans and exciting young players, even giving one of their young players an extension this week, which, hits close to home for the Orioles and their lack of extensions right now. But with Kansas
Katie
City,
Griggs came on and did the Birdland menu the other day.
hey,
That's
there
how
you,
that's all you
hey,
need.
and,
Five
and look,
dollar
that's a
beers.
good thing too. But you don't have to pick one or the other, right? Let's see these things in concert, just like in market streaming, which I've been banging the drum about for 3 years now. But Kansas City, not a lineup that's going to strike fear in your hearts, other than talking about wit, of course. So you're hoping that this weekend the starting pitching can acquit itself a little bit better, because let's face it, other than Eflin, it's to say it's been rough is probably the kindest way that I could describe it at this point.
You bummed that I took you to Toronto instead of Kansas City. Now that we're in Kansas City, I'm thinking about the barbecue.
Barbecue, yes, but also another cold weather environment for early April there, right?
Outdoor baseball. No, no,
Yeah,
no, no, no.
yeah.
Dude, I
So
cut your break in Toronto last year, man. It was last week. It was inside.
yeah, so that's where I'd look at it and say, probably not devastated. Although, hey, I will say this, and I know you and I talked about this. I mean, it's hard to believe that was 11 years ago at this point in time when we made that trip, and long time ago. Adam Jones and Mark
Wow,
Turkis, and
11 years ago.
yeah, right. I mean, Delman Young, all of that. But I remember, we kind of talked about it at the time, and yeah, I think that's an underrated ballpark. With now that I would say new renovations are not new renovations, or renovations that were probably done 25 years ago at this point in time. But I think considering its age, I like that ballpark. I do. So that's one I would, for anyone who hasn't been there, I would recommend going sometime. But yeah, maybe not this weekend, considering it's early April in Kansas City,
It was
Missouri.
better back in '83 when I went with my mom and dad and the
The carpet,
fountains and the carpet and all that stuff
yeah.
out there. The carpet that killed everybody, by the way. He is Luke Jones. He is killing it out there with Orioles and Ravens coverage. We're so busy, we haven't even bitched about the Terps. Have you seen the Harbaugh Bisciotti love in? Did you check it out yet?
I listened to it on my way to the ballpark. What was that? Wednesday?
There's
Shortly
something
after.
about watching it though and seeing how they chum up and interact that's a little
Yeah.
bonus.
I
You've seen it before.
I I mean, that part of it's doesn't move me. I just found it to be dull. I mean, like, if I'm and look, I do this for a living, so I should know a lot of. I thought there'd be more anecdotes or something. Like, it just wasn't very captivating to me. But
I agree with you. I
that's
don't think they
just,
want it to be captivating.
well, there's a way to be captivating though without revealing anything, in, inside trade secrets or
I've
anything
just
like
caught
that.
on the last couple of weeks. All these teams are doing reality TV. I mean,
I know.
Rubenstein in the locker room afterward.
Well,
It's
I,
just
I
like
was just,
it's Real Housewives of Orioles, and that's kind of it's like the Hulk Hogan show was years ago, or Ozzy Osbourne.
yeah. I mean,
It's
reality TV in air quotes. Yeah,
you can see like where Harbaugh and Bisciotti like there was an edit, and I don't know whether that's the good of water or where Harbaugh says no 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 I want to say that differently because they can. You
I
know what I
mean, it's
mean?
not
Like
live, so
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like I get, and it's just not. It's not accountability. It's fake
I
accountability.
mean,
It's
it's
fake
not a press con.
journalism.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
not a press conference. I mean, it's just not.
it's an intimidated employee talking to one guy with $150 million in the bank and the other guy who's a billionaire. There's a whole different level of up and down when it comes to that I
Uh,
eliminate when I sit with those cats, but they don't eliminate it by throwing me out. So, it's an economic issue as much as we can send that down to Washington, D.C. as well, but it's very much of being asked questions by someone who's intimidated for their job because he is. And that's just the way it is. That's reality. And I like Garrett a lot, but um, he's not qualified to ask tough questions because it's his,
well, it's not his job.
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
not
it's
his
not.
job.
I mean, it's just not his job.
Yeah.
Look, teams, all these teams, and this has been done a long time. They have their own websites. I mean, my goodness, we're getting to the end of the era of the regional sports network, as we know it, certainly. But I mean, teams have owned networks, right? I mean, we've seen it here in Baltimore with Masson. But
And newspapers are gone, and
and
local
and let's
television
and let's
sports
be
is gone.
clear.
Mark
I don't
Viviano's gone. They're all gone.
I don't have a problem with teams doing that as long as it's not being served as peddled as some kind of replacement for talking to actual media and answering real questions. When it's when it's peddled as that, then yeah, it's a terrible look.
I'll call
And
it
yeah,
trash, is what I'll call it.
yeah. Oh, and you mentioned
And it's a
it,
sleazy way of
it's funny.
sliding in that we talk to our website.
Yeah.
We talk to an intimidated employee, basically, on camera. Yes.
But to go back to what you said as far as like the reality TV thing, it's funny. I saw a headline on Thursday talking about, I guess, the NFL and HBO kind of changed the parameters for teams that are eligible for Hard Knocks. I don't know how much you actually caught of the AFC North Hard Knocks that they did, the second half of
I
last
did
season.
not.
I'll be totally honest with you. And look, full disclosure, it had probably been 6 or 7 years since I had watched Hard Knocks to any meaningful degree because, frankly, I didn't have HBO.
It got
Full
awful.
disclosure,
It got
I
awful. Like
it
once
is
it went to like the
so
Houston Texans,
it's
it's
so dull, and you can just I laugh when they bill it as inside access because it's anything but that. I mean, it's so whitewashed that no, it's just not. And now some teams might be a little more revealing than others, might give a little more access than others, but I think back to what it was in 2001, and obviously the Ravens were the first team to do that, and it's a great show. Now, I wasn't in the media then. I mean, I don't remember your feelings
I
on it
was
exactly.
captured briefly in Hard
Okay,
Knocks
fair enough, but
in the hotel when Rod Woodson checked in and Goose. There's a hug scene where I'm in the background, so
oh, okay.
I
See,
made a
I don't
cameo.
remember that.
Yeah,
But
I
I
made a
just,
cameo.
that was a much more raw version compared to what you saw from what the Ravens portrayed. And look, the Ravens aren't alone in this. Lots of teams. It's just so.
Brian and David and Art would have looked. By the way, we had an hour. I did almost 2 hours with Viviano. The last thing he said to me before I even turned the mic on, he quoted Art Modell in the exact same quote that I have quoted him in my books and that I quote him out loud. He said, Art Modell told me that if I didn't criticize him, that no one would ever believe a word I said. Viviano said that to me at Faithley's. I'm
Yeah,
like, all right, dude, we're starting now. And I grabbed my stuff and went on. And I never mentioned it to him, but he did say that, and that's part of the way Brian was. That's the part, that's the part that Katie Griggs and doing all of this Johnny Bravo stuff, that the Masson thing, and God, Masson's awful. Like it's just awful. All it's Ben McDonald's great, Palmer's great, Kevin Brown is fine. He's good. He's very good. The rest of it, oh my God. And I'm subjected to it every night. And it's
yeah,
so Pollyanna. It's so I'm wearing the bird hat. And it's unfortunate. Rock Kabako was a reporter at one point, a very good one at one point. And it's not the same as what you and I do. And I'm glad that Viviano pointed that out because like you can't get higher praise. I mean, what did you call? You called him royalty or something, right? I thought you were talking about
yeah.
me, but you were talking about him. I know.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I've
But
been doing it longer than he's been doing
you
it.
have been. You have.
If that matters, I don't know if it matters or not. All
Although,
right,
wait,
we'll take a break on
when
it.
did Viv start? I mean, not in Baltimore. You're right. I'm trying to think when he started his career,
He
but
was in like Dayton, Ohio, or something like that.
yeah.
He's a couple years older than me, but I still started in '84 at the paper, so I don't know
So there you go.
when he
Yeah,
got his first
it's probably
internship.
similar. Yeah, it's similar. But no, and you mentioned Art Modell. I mean, that's where I look. I see Steve Bisciotti do that video with the website, and it's a reminder that the last time he took questions from the media in Owings Mills was what, 3 months before the Ravens drafted Lamar Jackson, which we're going on 7 years now since that has happened. And I think also that, not that there were a ton of Baltimore reporters at the owners' meetings, but there were Baltimore reporters there, and he didn't do an interview with them. So, to me, it just kind of rings hollow, and it is what it is. I mean, again, they have the team website; it's their prerogative to do that. But I'm certainly not going to pat you on the back if you're not doing anything with real independent media that's going to ask some questions. And
About your money and
yeah,
about your team and about Justin Tucker.
and by the way, not all bad questions. Plenty of just fair and illuminating and interesting questions. And yeah, there's some bad stuff, but they also, good stuff and asking them about Harbaugh's
Talking about
extension
how
and all
much
that.
their money they each
So,
make and yucking and stuff. It's just like it smacks of, and I gave the recommendation to Viviano yesterday, and I'll give it to my whole audience. I came really close to getting Mark Leibovich on the program, Leibovich, longtime New York Times reporter and author, now at the Atlantic, and very, very close with Jeffrey Goldberg, who was in on the Trump war thing 2 weeks
hmm
ago in Yemen. Leibovich was trying to get to Fadley's on Wednesday. He's a Red Sox fan. He lives in D.C., lives in Northern Virginia with his family, and was trying to get him up for the game. It didn't happen or whatever. But his book on the insights of ownership and ideology and billionaires and yuck, yuck, yuck and all of that and the boys club. Um, I saw it, man, up close, up, way close when Bisciotti's screaming at me at 1 o'clock in the morning with my wife to stay away from the Harbaugh family out. And, like I've witnessed it, and it's gross. I mean, I said earlier this week I am profoundly disappointed as a fan and a guy who was in the parking lot when Art brought the team here, sitting next to Peter King, asking about the Browns name. I'm profoundly disappointed, not just in my treatment, in all of it. Ben Cleveland, Justin Tucker, the more lies, the lack of accountability, the fake transparency. Um, yeah, it's disappointing, but it's the National Football League, rare, very rare. He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke. You can find him. Leave him the hell alone this weekend. Don't find Luke this weekend. He's busy. Leave him alone. Let him go watch the Kansas City thing. We got the
I'll be
draft in a couple
watching.
weeks.
I'll be
Yeah,
watching.
we have a Final Four, right? One versus one,
Yeah.
yeah, right. It's the everybody you thought was going to win one, right?
Yeah, which I don't want that to become the norm, but it is kind of cool in a way, though, that it is the four best teams, but I also like Cinderella, so I don't want that to just disappear. And you know me, I've already said this,
Well, you got to go to
and we,
Villanova if you want to root for the
you
underdogs
and
in
I,
basketball.
you and I can get into Buzz Williams at some point. I I've warmed up to it a little bit. He seems like a decent guy. He seems excited about the job.
Why don't you get a guy that wants to be here?
Yeah, but
That seems
it's
simple
just
enough, right?
there's just so much to it that I hope it works. I hope he succeeds. He's been successful everywhere he's been. It's not a terrible hire or anything like that. But I want to be inspired by the program again. And I just feel like what should have been so fun the last 2 weeks ended up being a nightmare in so many ways.
Dude,
And
I'm
it's
going to
not
throw
even
you
that
under the bus right now. You came to me at Fadley's on Wednesday and said you're done with them.
I mean, I'm not done with them in the sense that I'm swearing them off or I'm not going to watch them or anything, but
You love the Terps, though.
I used to.
I
And,
have
and to be
Len Elmore on
and
next
to
week,
be
so I'm
honest,
looking
like,
forward to that.
look, I'm going to sound like an old guy here. I mean, when Gary retired and they went to the Big Ten, like it's kind of been since then that it's just kind of been a gradual decline for my passion for it.
It's not as
Um,
much fun.
yeah.
It's
So,
just not.
but I'm going to watch, and I want Buzz Williams to do well. I want the school to do everything they need to do. That some of the fair points that Kevin Willard pointed out, I hope they address, for Buzz Williams or whoever's coaching in the, it sounds like Buzz Williams. I saw Jeff Erman reported Juan Dixon could be part of the staff, which I think that would go a long way to appease some of the Terps alumni that have said, hey, let's
By the
have
way, I
some.
ran into Bino the other night at
Did
opening
you?
day. Yeah, I took a picture
Okay.
with Bino. Me and Bino and Brian Kowitz. So I
Wow.
have
That's a
a,
crew.
a kid that I coached who has been a big time basketball player as well as a coach, and Brian Kowitz, who won a World Series with the Braves in '95. So, you never know who you run into on the club level on opening day. But Bino walk by me, Bino, so. I love that kid. I call him a kid, but he's out of work and like really wants to go back and coach in Maryland.
Hmm.
His heart's in Maryland. He really is. His love is for Maryland.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a great example. I mean, and I'm not saying it has to be him, but I want to be inspired by the program again. And look, a lot of that's not, it's just not what college basketball is anymore in the sense of freshmen growing in the way that Juan Dixon and Lonnie Baxter did. But, I want it to still have a chance to be great, not that I think they're ever going to become Duke. And I never really thought that 25 years ago necessarily. But I want
Well,
to think
Luke, I'm old enough to remember when they're going to be the UCLA of the
the
East.
UCLA of the East, yeah. But I just the fact that they got back to the Sweet 16, and I think back to their peak with Gary where they made what, 7 Sweet 16s in 10 years, I think it was. I want to think that kind of success is possible again. And if the stars align and you capture lightning in a bottle perfectly, that you've got a chance to maybe get back to a Final Four at some point in time. If you can do that, if Buzz Williams can do that, or whoever's coaching in the next 20 years, then you'll still have me. But again, it's not even like Maryland specifically. It's just what it's become without, they need guardrails. They do. And I'm not saying I know how to do all that perfectly. I know it's complicated. And again, I'm not opposed to, I want these kids to get paid. Like they deserve that. But I still, I want it to be something that I can love. And man, the last 2 weeks have been really, really difficult on that front, big time.
All right, we did it all. He is Luke Jones. Happy weekend, everybody out there. Drive safely, eat liberally, drink responsibly, gamble extra responsibly, and we'll see you here on the internet. I'm Nestor. He's Luke. We are WNST AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore positive.